My name is Mara Velen, and I turned 18 last night. Halfway through my birthday party, my father caught me in the hall and murmured, "After everyone leaves, you need to sign a few documents for Uncle Grant. It's only paperwork." I smiled at him. I acted like I believed him. Then I went into the pantry, opened my laptop, and confirmed the one thing my grandparents had prepared for me years earlier. Every dollar, every investment account, and the lake house they left behind was protected inside an irrevocable trust no one in my family could reach. By breakfast, my parents, my uncle, and my younger sister knew the truth. The cottage, the accounts, the portfolio, all of it sat behind a legal barrier they could not cross. My father went pale. My uncle, who had already promised to sell land that had never belonged to him, started calling attorneys before his coffee got cold. Before I tell you how that morning exploded, please like this story and subscribe to Dull Pain Stories. Tell me your city and the time where you are listening. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now I need to start 6 summers earlier at Willowmere Lake, on the day my grandfather told me something I would not understand for years. The year I was 13, Grandpa Arthur picked me up in his old pickup and drove almost an hour to Willowmere. The cottage stood a little uphill from the shore, tucked between spruce trees so thick they swallowed half the daylight. One side of the porch leaned low. The screen door scraped the frame instead of shutting cleanly. The place smelled like ash from the stove, sun-warmed paper, and a sweetness I could never identify. "Take that end, Mara," Grandpa said, hoisting a length of fence board. I grabbed it. We spent the morning pulling out 4 rotten posts along the east boundary. He never hurried me. He showed me how to test old wood by pressing a thumb into the grain. "If it sinks in, it's finished," he said. Inside, Grandma Elaine had cold lemonade and ham sandwiches set out on the kitchen table Grandpa had built for her the spring after they married. Later, she sat on the porch with a book in her lap and patted the chair beside her when I came outside. We watched the lake go copper in the evening light. "This cottage stays with someone who understands it," Grandpa said, brushing sawdust from his palms. "And family is not always the person with your last name, Mara. Family is the person who shows up." I thought he was being sentimental. I was 13. I did not know he was giving me a warning. That whole summer, I returned to Willowmere nearly every weekend. I learned which corner of the roof gathered needles, where the pipes rattled, which window needed a shoulder shove, and how to relight the stubborn water heater. In October, Grandma taught me to arrange the bookshelves by color because, as she said, it made winter feel less gray. Grandpa walked me to the property markers, old iron pins he had set himself. I had no idea he had already started talking to a lawyer about that exact land and about me. Home never felt like that. Our house in Marlow Ridge was decent enough. 3 bedrooms, a strip of lawn, and a detached garage my dad used as an office for his hardware supply business. It was clean, practical, and cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. My sister Tessa was 11 and had the biggest bedroom. My parents had redone it that spring, pale yellow walls, a reading lamp, new curtains, furniture that all matched. My room still had stained carpet from the people who owned the house before us. One night at dinner, Dad brought up the cottage. "My father's place is just sitting there draining money," Colin said, cutting into his steak. "Taxes, insurance, repairs. We should sell while lakefront property is hot and put the money somewhere useful." My mother nodded. "That would be sensible." "Grandpa said it was supposed to stay in the family," I said. Colin gave a short laugh. It was not cruel exactly. It was worse. It was the kind of laugh adults use when they have already decided a child does not matter. "You were 13, Mara. He was making you feel special." No one asked what I remembered or what Grandma had said. The conversation moved to Tessa's piano recital, which apparently deserved more attention. Mom had already ordered a frame for the certificate. 2 weeks earlier, I had won first place at the County Science Expo. The ribbon was still folded inside my backpack. After dinner, I gathered the plates. On the counter, partly covered by a grocery note, lay a glossy brochure from North Star Horizons. Lake parcels wanted, premium cash offers. A phone number was written in the corner. The handwriting was not my father's. I put it back exactly where it had been. Upstairs, I sat on my bed thinking about Grandpa's table, the one he made with his own hands. I thought about Grandma knowing without asking that I liked extra mustard on my sandwich. Then I thought about the brochure downstairs. Someone was already turning my grandparents' home into a number. Grandpa Arthur died 2 years later. I was 15. His funeral was on a damp Thursday under a flat gray sky. The rented chairs sank slightly into the soft cemetery grass. I sat in the second row clutching his handkerchief, green plaid, thin at the corners, faintly smelling of pine sap. At the reception, I noticed Dad and his brother Grant near the coffee urn. Grant was not eating. He had a folder under one arm and Colin kept nodding while Grant spoke. I heard one sentence as I passed. "We need to move before the estate gets messy." They were talking about the cottage while people were still carrying casseroles into the church hall. I said nothing. I was 15. I had no authority, no proof, and no idea Grandpa had already prepared for that exact conversation. 2 more years passed. I was 17 when Grandma Elaine got sick in April. By August, she was gone. The last time I saw her, she held my hand so tightly I could feel the bones in her fingers. "The cottage belongs with you, Mara," she whispered. "Do not let anyone steal it. Give me your word." "You have it." She squeezed once, then closed her eyes. After her funeral, another gray day with more folding chairs, Dad sat at our kitchen table and told Mom, "Now we can finally settle the lake property." He sounded relieved, not grieving, relieved. That evening, Grant called. I heard Dad in the garage, pacing while he talked. "Yes, I agree. Let's get this moving." His voice was lighter than it had been in months. I stood in the hall with a tumbler in my hand and understood something that lodged under my ribs. Grandma's death was not a loss to them. It was a clearance notice. I did not cry that night. I made a colder decision, even if I did not yet know how to act on it. From 17 until my 18th birthday, the cottage became my quiet resistance. Every Saturday morning, I drove out in the used blue sedan I had bought with tutoring money. I patched the torn porch screen. I changed the weather seal on the back door. I swept spruce needles off the roof because Grandpa always said that was where leaks began. At home, the language changed. The cottage stopped being Grandpa's place. It became the family asset. Dad said it that way over dinner, as if the phrase had always been true. Uncle Grant started coming by twice a month, sometimes with brown envelopes, sometimes with a laptop open to land sale estimates. I tried once to push back. "What about Grandma? She wanted me to keep it." Mom set down her fork with that careful patience she used before correcting Tessa's homework. "Your grandmother was very emotional near the end, honey. These things have to be handled like business." Business. They used that word for anything they wanted to strip of love. By the winter before I turned 18, Dad stopped circling and started pointing. "After your birthday, we'll deal with this together as a family." The way he said family told me he meant his decision, my signature. One chilly December afternoon, I was at the cottage clearing the hallway closet. Tucked behind folded quilts, I found a sealed envelope with my name written in Grandma Elaine's slanting hand. Inside was a single business card. Selene Porter, attorney at law. Beneath that, in smaller letters, Velen Legacy Trust. My hands started shaking, not because I was scared, but because I understood. Grandma had left it where only I would find it. She knew I would be the one washing curtains and sorting closets. Not Dad, not Grant, me. I tucked the card into my wallet. I did not call. Not yet. 4 months before my birthday, Selene Porter called me first. It was a Tuesday evening in March. I was at my desk studying for a biology exam when an unknown local number lit up my phone. Mara, this is Selene Porter. I represented your grandparents. Her voice was calm and measured, as if she had practiced every word. I need to meet with you before your birthday. There are facts you deserve to know, and time is getting short. She asked me to come to her office the next Saturday morning. Alone, so I did. Selene Porter was in her early 60s, with steel gray hair cut at her jaw and reading glasses hanging from a black cord. Her office was narrow, tidy, and smelled of coffee, printer ink, and old folders. She sat across from me and opened a thick file. Your grandparents came to me 6 years ago, she said. They created an irrevocable trust. The Willowmere cottage, a cash account, and an investment portfolio were transferred into it. The total value is roughly $2.3 million. You are the only beneficiary. The room seemed to move a few inches sideways. My grandparents had left all of it to me. They transferred everything while they were alive, she continued. That means those assets never became part of their probate estate. Your father and your uncle have no legal claim to them. She slid a summary toward me. My name appeared on the second line. 6 years earlier, the cottage deed had been registered at the county office in the trust's name. Your father appears not to know that. Why didn't they tell him? Selene paused. Your grandfather told me in almost these exact words that his sons would sell the cottage before the funeral wreaths dried. The office went quiet. I stared at the page with my name printed on it. There is another concern, Selene said. Someone has asked questions at the recorder's office about the cottage title within the last 5 weeks. After that meeting, I started listening. Not dramatically. Quietly. The next Sunday, Uncle Grant came for dinner. Afterward, he and Dad went into the garage. The door was left open just enough for their voices to carry. Grant said, I've already signed the purchase contract with North Star for $520,000, but they need clean title before closing. So how do we get it clean? Dad answered, quitclaim deed. Mom and Dad are gone, we're the heirs. We transfer the property to ourselves, record it, then sell. Is that going to hold? It's a normal transfer between heirs. Nobody is going to dig. A pause, then Dad lower. What about Mara? My chest locked. Grant answered immediately, too smoothly. She's still 18 until next week under the trust terms. She can't control anything yet. By the time she figures it out, the sale is closed. She'll be mad, then she'll move on. Give her $60,000 for school and she'll call herself lucky. I stepped away from the door. My fingers felt numb. Grant had already signed a $520,000 agreement with a developer for a property he did not own, land held by a trust he did not know existed. That night, I sat on my bed and texted Selene 2 words. They're rushing. Her reply came almost at once. I thought they would. Come Saturday, we will prepare your documents. I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling. In the next room, Tessa was laughing at a video. Downstairs, my parents were loading the dishwasher and talking about errands like nothing had shifted. Somewhere in Uncle Grant's folder was a contract already doomed. He simply had not learned that yet. That Saturday, Selene drew a timeline on a yellow legal pad, linking dates like points on a map. The cottage is already titled to the trust, she said. If Grant files a quitclaim deed, the clerk should reject it because the ownership history will not line up. Your grandparents' names have not been the current owners for 6 years. Should reject it, I said. She looked at me. Yes, but if he brings supporting papers, an heirship affidavit, false notary language, anything misleading, he could create a title cloud. That would not give him ownership, but it could freeze the property in court for many months. So I need to get there first. You need to act at the correct moment. Under the trust, your full beneficiary authority begins on your 18th birthday. Once you sign the acceptance, I can record a notice of legal interest first thing the next business morning. That notice alerts anyone searching the parcel that the trust has active legal control. It prevents other documents from being recorded against it without review. What do I sign? One acceptance form. I will handle the filings. I sat with that a second. Should I tell my parents? Selene removed her glasses. Your grandfather hired me to protect you, Mara. He did not ask me to bargain with them. When I got home, Dad was cheerful in the kitchen. Good news, kid. We're having a birthday party for you. Whole family Saturday night. 18 is a big marker. He smiled. Mom smiled. Tessa actually clapped. I smiled too. My father was planning my birthday party. My uncle was planning to sell my grandmother's cottage. And I was sitting at that table wearing a smile because 11 days later I was going to let them believe every part of their plan was still moving on their schedule. I will be honest. Lying awake that night, knowing what was coming, was harder than I expected. I wanted to go downstairs and say, Dad, I know everything. But Selene was right. If I warned them, they would adjust. So I stayed quiet and I waited. Let me ask you something. Have you ever kept silent because speaking would have made you less safe, even though every nerve in your body wanted to tell the truth? Write it below. I do read your comments. And if you are not subscribed to Dull Pain Stories yet, now is the moment, because this is where everything starts to turn. 6 days before my birthday, Mom sat beside me on the sofa. She used her adult conversation voice, low and gentle and clearly rehearsed. Since you're almost 18, Laurel said, there are some family choices we should discuss together. Together sounded like a costume someone had dressed a command in. The cottage is expensive, she continued. Taxes, insurance, upkeep. Your father's business has been under pressure. Selling would let us pay down the debt and create college money for you and Tessa, for both of you. Grandma asked me to protect it. Her face changed for half a second. Irritation flashed, then vanished behind softness. Elaine was sentimental when she was ill, Mara. Sentiment is lovely, but it doesn't pay bills. Dad entered right on cue. I wondered how long he had been standing nearby. I've already spoken with a buyer, he said. Strong price, clean offer. Who's buying? He blinked. A development group. Grant has contacts there. Which group? Another pause, longer. Northstar something, they're legitimate. I did not push. I'll think about it. Dad patted my shoulder. That's my girl. He walked away satisfied, as if a deal had just closed. Later that night, Tessa knocked on my door. Her hair was wet from the shower and she wore pajama pants with little moons on them. Mara. Yeah. She sat on the edge of my bed and picked at a loose thread on my blanket. Mom and Dad keep talking about the lake place after they think I'm asleep. They sound weird. Weird how? Like they're excited, but scared too. She looked sideways at me. Is there something happening? I tugged the blanket over her ankles. Leave it to me, Tess. She nodded, but she did not believe me. I had said I would think about it. That was not agreement. They knew it, so the pressure would keep coming. 3 days before my birthday, Uncle Grant appeared without warning. He caught me in the driveway while I was carrying groceries from the car. Casual jacket, wide grin, leaning against his SUV like he had just been passing through. Grant sold real estate. Nothing about him was accidental. Hey, kiddo, got a minute? Sure, Uncle Grant. We sat on the front steps. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. Here's the reality, Mara. That lake lot alone can bring 520. I have a buyer I trust. Quick closing, tidy documents, no headaches. And what do I receive? 60,000 cash for college. I let the number sit between us. 60 out of 520. Grant smiled like I was being charmingly naive. You're 18, Mara. 60 grand is huge money at your age. Most kids would grab it. Whose name is on the deed, Uncle Grant? His smile stalled. Only for a breath, but I saw it. Then he rebuilt it. Your grandparents' names, but they passed. It goes to your dad and me as their sons. That was not how it worked. I knew it. He should have known it. He made commissions from property transfers for a living. He was relying on me not understanding the difference. "I'll think about it," I said again. Grant stood and brushed dust from his pants. "Don't stall too long. Good opportunities have expiration dates." He drove away, and before he reached the corner, he was already on his phone. I could see his mouth moving through the windshield. That night, I texted Selene again. "They're moving faster." She answered, "Stay steady." 3 days, 3 days. I could survive 3 days. The night before my birthday, I drove to the cottage alone. Willowmere lay dark and flat under a thin moon. The spruce trees along the shore looked like black paper cutouts against the sky. I parked on the gravel patch Grandpa had leveled himself, walked up the porch steps, heard the second step creak the way it always had, and sat in the chair beside his old one. The air smelled of rain and resin. I checked my email. Selene had sent the full packet: acceptance of beneficiary authority, confirmation of designation, a single-page outline of the trust, and instructions marked with digital tabs. Everything waited for one signature. Mine. When midnight came, I went through every page twice. Then I closed the laptop and listened to the water. Grandpa used to sit in that same spot and say, "Patience isn't doing nothing, Mara. Patience is knowing when to move." For years, I thought he meant fishing. The tears came suddenly. Not loud sobbing, just a quiet spill I could not stop. I cried because I wanted a different family. I wanted a father who saw the cottage as a place to take his daughter on summer mornings, not as collateral. I wanted a mother who asked me what I needed instead of explaining what was practical. I wanted not to need a legal document to protect me from the people whose job was supposed to be protecting me. But wishes do not record at county offices. Trust papers do. I wiped my face, locked the cottage, drove home, and set my alarm for 11:40 p.m. In less than a day, I would turn 18. A few hours after that, my family would learn the cottage had never been theirs to sell. At 11:50 that night, my bedroom door was shut. The house had gone silent. Dad and Mom went upstairs about an hour earlier, and Tessa's light clicked off before 10:30. I opened my laptop and joined the video call. Selene appeared in her home office, her glasses low on her nose, papers stacked neatly beside a lamp. "Ready, ready. When the clock turns midnight, the trust gives you full authority as beneficiary. I will guide you through the signature." She explained it again, slowly. I was signing one page acknowledging that I accepted the beneficiary authority my grandparents had created for me. From that moment forward, no decisions involving trust assets could move without me and Selene acting under the trust terms. "Tomorrow morning at 8, she said, "I will be at the recorder's office. I will file the notice of legal interest against the parcel. Once it is recorded, no one can sell, transfer, pledge, or cloud the title without the filing being flagged. What if they already submit something? Then the mismatch appears immediately. The records show the deed moved to the trust 6 years earlier. Any contrary document from your father or uncle will be rejected or sent for review." I looked at the page in front of me. My grandparents' names were printed above mine. My signature line waited. At exactly midnight, I signed. Selene's voice softened. "This is not revenge, Mara. This is your grandfather's final protection. You only had to reach the age when you could accept it." The clock on my laptop read 12:04 a.m. I was 18. I was the beneficiary of the Vellon Legacy Irrevocable Trust. And downstairs in the garage, whatever quitclaim deed Uncle Grant thought he could use was already useless. He would find out in roughly 8 hours. Elsewhere, in the kitchen of Grant's rented townhouse, Grant Vellon was printing documents. I did not know that while it was happening. I pieced it together later from what the clerk told Selene and from what Dad admitted during one of the conversations that hurt the most. That night, as my name went onto the acceptance upstairs, Grant printed a quitclaim deed. It was the sort of form that conveys whatever interest a person actually has in a property. Used honestly, it is routine. Used by someone with no rights at all, it becomes fraud dressed in clean formatting. He called Dad a little before midnight. Everything is ready. We file in the morning. The office opens at 8, but I want Mara distracted with birthday cleanup before she starts asking questions. Dad asked. You're certain? Grant answered. They're gone, Colin. We're the sons. It's straightforward. It was not straightforward. It was a forged plan wearing real estate vocabulary. Grant also had a second file open, a purchase agreement with North Star Horizons, LLC. Price, $520,000. Closing, 28 days after the quitclaim deed recorded. If Grant failed to deliver clear title, he owed a $52,000 penalty plus damages. He had signed it 7 weeks earlier, before verifying the current owner, before confirming the property was in any estate, before doing the title search he would have demanded from any client. He assumed he knew. He assumed nobody had planned ahead. Grant bet more than $500,000 on land that had never belonged to him. And when he walked into the recorder's office the next morning with his polished smile and a folder under his arm, the title history was going to answer him. My birthday party began at 4 that afternoon. The living room filled with about 24 people, neighbors, a few of my parents' church friends, 2 of Dad's former business contacts, Tessa's friends' parents, and Celia Rowan from the cottage next door. Celia sat near the window with iced tea in her hand and eyes that missed almost nothing. There were balloons, a silver banner that said Happy 18th, and a rectangular cake from the bakery on Oak Street. I smiled. I thanked people. I opened small gifts, a notebook, a bookstore card, a framed photo. In my jacket pocket, folded cleanly, was the signed acceptance form from the night before. I did not touch it. I did not need to. The important part was already done. Dad stood near the cake table and tapped a spoon against his glass. Conversation faded. I just want to say that Mara is officially stepping into adulthood today, he said. Laurel and I are proud of her. He paused and scanned the room. Our family also has a few promising plans ahead. He looked straight at me. Right, Mara. Every face turned my way. Thanks, Dad, I said. Nothing else. He waited, then chuckled as if I had made a shy little joke and raised his glass. People followed. The room loosened again. Near the front door, I saw Grant checking his phone and typing fast with both thumbs. Celia caught my sleeve when I passed the window. Your grandmother would want you to hear this, she said quietly. I saw your uncle at the cottage last weekend with 3 men in dress shoes. They walked the property line with a measuring wheel. Grant had shown the buyers the land before he had title. That was how certain he had been. After the cake was sliced and plates were passed around, Dad stood again. This time his voice was louder, more practiced, the voice he used when he wanted witnesses. Before everyone goes, I want to share something. Our family has had a difficult year financially. Some of you know what happened with the business. It has not been easy. Soft, sympathetic sounds moved around the room. But my parents, Arthur and Elaine, left the family something meaningful, the cottage at Willowmere, and we have decided to sell it so we can protect everyone's future. We have decided. The words hit me like cold water. He was announcing it in front of 24 people as if it were finished. Then he looked at me. Mara understands. She knows this is best for all of us. Isn't that right, sweetheart? The room held still. The neighbors who had watched me grow up. Celia with her iced tea. Tessa half hidden by the armchair. Mom added, smiling tightly, responsible families give things up for one another. My fork touched the plate with a small clink that seemed to fill the room. I did not agree to any sale, Dad. His smile stayed in place, but his jaw tightened. She's nervous, big birthday. I'm not nervous, and I'm not agreeing. Grant stepped forward from the doorway. Come on, Mara, this is not the moment. I lifted my water glass, took a slow sip, and set it back down. You're right, Uncle Grant, this is not the moment. I met his eyes. The moment was 8 this morning. Silence. Grant's phone vibrated in his pocket. He did not look at it. No one in the room moved. The guests began leaving after that. Polite smiles, quick hugs, careful goodbyes, the sort of exit people make when they feel a storm forming inside another family's house. Within half an hour, the living room had emptied down to my parents, Grant, Tessa, Celia, and 2 neighbors who looked unsure whether walking out would be rude or staying would be worse. Mom waited until the last casual guest was gone. Then she turned on me in the kitchen. Her voice was controlled but sharp enough to carry. Do you understand what this is doing to your father? She stepped closer. He might lose this house, Mara, the house you sleep in, and you are clinging to a weekend cottage. I go there every weekend, Mom. That is not the point. She put both palms on the counter. This household is supposed to be united. A family decides together. If you loved us, you would not need some attorney telling you how to behave. The room went still. I stared at her. How do you know about an attorney? Mom did not even flinch. Grant found the card in your purse last week. Selene Porter, who is she? My stomach dropped. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized they had searched my things. They had gone looking for ammunition. Before I could answer, Celia Rowan spoke from the kitchen doorway, her voice level and hard. That girl has every right to speak to counsel, Laurel. Elaine would have insisted on it. Mom turned. This is family business, Celia. Please stay out of it. Celia did not move. Elaine was my closest friend for 38 years. I know exactly what she wanted. The quiet between them felt sharp enough to cut. I said nothing. I did not have to, not yet. Celia left. The 2 neighbors slipped out behind her with soft goodbyes. Then only 5 of us remained, Dad, Mom, Grant, Tessa, and me. Dad shut the kitchen door. The overhead light hummed. He pulled out a chair, sat, and folded his hands like he was about to present terms. Here is what happens now, Mara. Tomorrow morning, Grant and I walk into records and submit the documents. The cottage sells, you receive your portion, a fair portion, and we move forward as a family. What portion? 60,000. Out of how much? Dad said nothing. Grant, leaning near the door frame, filled the silence. Do not make this ugly. I looked at my father. And if I refuse, his face hardened. If you fight us, you are choosing to be alone. No college help, no living here. The kitchen was so quiet I heard the faucet drip once. You're threatening to throw me out on my 18th birthday. I am asking you to stand with your family. I pushed back my chair and stood. My hands trembled, but my voice held. I am standing with my family, Dad. I'm standing with the 2 people who kept their promise to me. I walked past Grant, past Tessa perched on the steps, arms wrapped around her knees, and went upstairs. I shut my door, sat on my bed, and breathed. Dad thought the deadline was 9 o'clock at the recorder's office. He did not know Selene's deadline had been 8. That night, I sat with the form I had already signed at midnight. My father had threatened to remove me from my own home unless I handed over a cottage that was legally mine. My mother had told me I did not love them. My uncle intended to file a false deed first thing the next morning. All I could think was that Grandma had understood them. She had known what money would expose, and she had prepared long before any of us reached that night. If someone you loved ever protected you after they were gone, tell me about it in the comments. Here is what 8 o'clock brought. At 8 the next morning, the county records office unlocked its doors and the overhead lights flickered on. A clerk in a navy sweater unlocked the front counter. Selene Porter was the first person through the door, wearing a charcoal jacket and carrying a leather folder. She presented 2 documents, a certified copy of the Vellon Legacy Irrevocable Trust and a notice of legal interest for the Willowmere parcel. She asked that both be recorded. The clerk checked the forms against the parcel history, entered the number, and pressed the stamp down. Recorded. From then on, Anyone who searched the title for the Willowmere cottage would see the trust listed and the legal notice attached. Vellon Legacy Irrevocable Trust. Selene Porter, Trustee. Mara Vellon, Beneficiary. At 8:17 a.m., Selene called me. It is done. The notice is recorded, the parcel is flagged, anything they bring in will run into the chain of title. I was sitting at the kitchen table eating toast. Dad was upstairs getting dressed. Mom was making coffee. Ordinary morning noises filled the house, water in the pipes, a drawer sliding shut, the scrape of a mug on the counter. At 8:36, Dad and Grant came downstairs together. Dad wore his blue button-down, the one he used to wear for bank meetings before the business collapsed. Grant had the same folder under his arm. "We'll be back by lunch," Dad said, taking his keys. I looked up from my plate. "Good luck." He paused in the doorway. Maybe he heard something in my voice. Maybe he saw something in my face. Then he turned and left. I washed my plate, dried it, put it away, and waited. I did not see their faces, but Selene stayed at records deliberately and told me how it unfolded. At 9:07, Grant approached the counter and slid the quitclaim deed forward with an easy nod. Dad stood behind him with his hands in his pockets, glancing around like they would be gone in 10 minutes. The clerk took the document, typed in the parcel number, studied her screen, typed again, and stopped. "I cannot record this, sir." Grant leaned closer. "Why not?" "The title is held by the Vellon Legacy Irrevocable Trust. That transfer was recorded 6 years ago. There is also a notice of legal interest recorded this morning." "That can't be right," Grant said. "My parents own that place." "Sir, the deed went to the trust 6 years ago. The ownership history is clear. This quitclaim deed does not match the current ownership record." Dad stepped beside him. "There is no trust. My parents never said anything about a trust." The clerk looked between them. "You should contact the trustee listed on the record, Selene Porter." Grant put one hand flat on the counter. His color drained. Selene's name, the same name from the card they found in my purse, was now on a public filing they could not remove. Dad turned slowly toward Grant. "You told me this was simple," Grant said. "I didn't know about the trust. You are a real estate agent. How did you not search the title?" Grant opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. The clerk said evenly, "Gentlemen, if there is a dispute, you need to step away from the counter." Selene sat in the waiting area near the door and watched them leave. She did not speak. She had no reason to. Dad called at 9:24 a.m. I was on the front porch watching the neighbor's sprinkler sweep a shining arc across the grass. "What did you do?" His voice was tight, almost shaking. I could hear traffic behind him. "I accepted Grandma and Grandpa's gift, nothing more. You sneaked around with a lawyer we have never met. Selene Porter has been the trust attorney for 6 years. You never asked." Heavy breathing filled the line. "That was my parents' property, Mara. I was their child. And they put it in my care, not because they hated you, Dad, because they knew you would cash it out." The silence that followed felt endless. I counted the sprinkler rotations. 4 full sweeps before he spoke. "We'll fight this." "You can try. The trust is irrevocable. I cannot undo it either." "You don't understand what you're saying." "I do. I've had 4 months to learn." He hung up. No goodbye, just a click. I set the phone on the porch rail. My hands shook, not from victory, not even from fear, but from the weight of having said those words to my father. The same man who taught me to balance on a bicycle when I was 7 had tried to sell the home Grandma trusted to me. I sat there until the shaking stopped. It took longer than I wanted. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number. A man spoke, brisk and polished. "Miss Vellon, this is Bennett Hayes with North Star Horizons. We need to discuss the Willowmere property." Bennett Hayes had the voice of a developer, quick, clean, and already planning the next step before the present one finished. "We have a purchase agreement with Grant Vellon for that parcel," he said. He represented clear title. "We have just been informed there is a legal notice on the property." "There is." Can you clarify the situation? My uncle does not own the cottage or the land, he never did. The property has belonged to an irrevocable trust for 6 years. I am the sole beneficiary. Papers rustled through the receiver. He claimed he was the heir. He may have represented that. It did not give him ownership. You should speak with your attorney. A longer pause. Miss Velen, would the trust consider a direct sale? We are prepared to make a competitive offer. No sale will happen. Understood. His voice cooled. Then we will pursue remedies against Mr. Velen. I gave him Selini's number. Within the hour, she confirmed to North Star's legal department what I had said. The trust was valid. Grant had no authority. The purchase contract had been signed based on a false representation of ownership. North Star responded immediately. They planned to pursue Grant for breach of contract, the $52,000 penalty plus damages. That afternoon, Selini called again. Mara, there is another issue. The quitclaim deed Grant tried to record includes a notary seal. I asked for a copy before the rejection was finalized. That seal does not correspond to any notary registered in the county. It appears false. I closed my eyes. That's a crime, isn't it? In this state, yes, potentially a felony. My uncle had not only tried to steal the cottage, he had committed a crime while doing it. Dad came home at 2 in the afternoon. He entered like a man carrying an invisible weight. Mom was already in the kitchen, arms crossed, her face blotchy from what looked like furious crying. I sat at the dining table and did not stand. Dad sat opposite me and stared at the table. The house may be gone, he said finally. His voice was flat, drained. The bank wants $210,000. The store is gone. That cottage was supposed to be the way out. I know things are bad, Dad. I'm sorry the store failed. Then help us. You were never entitled to use the cottage as your rescue plan. It was Grandma and Grandpa's gift to me. A gift, he nearly laughed. You're 18. What do you need with a lake cottage? It isn't about need, it's about what they wanted. Mom stepped into the doorway. They were old, Mara. They were not thinking clearly. They were clear enough to hire a lawyer 6 years before they died. Dad hit the table with his palm. I'll challenge the trust. My phone answered before I did. I had called Selini before he walked in and left her on speaker, not to trap him, but because I knew we would end up here. Mr. Velen, Selini said, calm and professional, challenging an irrevocable trust created 6 years before the grantor's deaths with documented capacity, witnesses, proper notarization, and recorded deeds would likely cost more than the property could justify. I would strongly advise against that path. Only the faucet broke the quiet. Dad looked at me, really looked. For the first time, I saw something in his face that was not anger, recognition. 2 hours later, Grant called the house. Dad answered in the living room. I stood in the hallway, close enough to hear through the thin wall. North Star is suing me, Grant said. His voice sounded stripped raw. 52,000 penalty plus damages. They're using the word fraud. Dad's reply was colder than I had ever heard it. Did you commit fraud? I thought we owned it. Grant, you sell property for a living. You run title checks for clients. How did you not do one? I thought it would be fine. You thought. Now your guess has wrecked both of us. You were counting on the money too. I didn't forge a notary seal. A long pause. I didn't forge it, I just used a stamp I found. That is forgery, you know that. Grant's breathing grew loud. I need a lawyer. So do I, Dad said. Do not call this house again until you have one. He hung up. I heard the couch springs groan as he sat down, then nothing. Upstairs, Tessa's door was open. She was on her bed, headphones loose at her collar, eyes wide. Is Uncle Grant in serious trouble? Yes, Tess, he is. Is Dad? I sat beside her. Dad made bad choices. Uncle Grant made worse ones. She nodded slowly in the frightened way younger people process adult disaster, not understanding all the pieces but knowing enough to feel the ground shift. I went to my room, sat by the window, and looked at the street. A dog passed with its owner, a sprinkler hissed. The world kept moving. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel satisfied. I felt like I had walked out of a burning house and had not yet checked what I had lost inside. Over the next 4 weeks, the consequences dropped one after another. North Star Horizons filed a civil complaint against Grant Velin for breach of contract, misrepresentation of title, and the $52,000 penalty, plus $71,000 in damages and legal costs. Their attorney sent the papers by certified mail to his townhouse. He signed for them on a Wednesday. The recorder's office referred the false notary seal to the county prosecutor. An investigator was assigned. Grant's real estate license was suspended pending review, which meant his income stopped almost overnight. In a town this size, information travels even when nobody tries to spread it. I said nothing. I did not need to. Court filings were public, and North Star's complaint named the Willowmere parcel. The lake neighbors read the county paper. They talked. By the second week, the story had moved through the library board, the church parking lot, and Palmer's Market checkout lanes. By then, the version people repeated was simple. Arthur Velin's sons tried to sell his cottage, and the granddaughter stopped them. Some people called me brave. Others called me hard. I did not correct either group. Grant called me once. I answered. Mara, please, ask your attorney to remove the notice. If the title clears, I may be able to negotiate with North Star and lower the penalty. The notice protects my property, Uncle Grant. It stays until Selene says it can come off. Your grandparents would be ashamed. I waited before answering. Then I said quietly, my grandparents created the trust. They arranged this and trusted me with it. Shame is not what I imagined they would feel. He hung up. I put down the phone and looked at the photograph on my desk. Grandpa Arthur and me the summer I was 13, both of us standing beside the fence we repaired. I left it exactly where it was. Dad did not contest the trust. Selene had been right. Legal fees would bury him, and the argument would fail. An irrevocable trust created by competent grantors, witnessed, properly notarized, and recorded years before death is not easy to unwind just because disappointed heirs want it undone. Instead, Dad did what he should have done before any of this. He sold the hardware supply business at a loss, but for enough to start a bank repayment plan. They kept the house by inches and lost the savings. Mom returned to work for the first time in 11 years. She took a job at a pharmacy on Juniper Avenue, the same chain where she had worked before Tessa was born. She told neighbors she missed being busy. Nobody believed that, but nobody challenged it. The town knew. Not every detail, but enough. Colin and Grant Velin tried to sell Arthur and Elaine's cottage, and Mara blocked them. That was the story at the diner, at school fundraisers, at the gas station on Route 31. Dad and I did not speak for 16 days after the recorder's office. The house grew quiet in a way that felt physical, like the silence had mass. One afternoon, Celia Rowan brought me a peach pie still warm from her oven. Your parents made choices, she said, setting the tin on my desk. But their shame is not an heirloom, don't carry it. I nodded. Then Tessa called one evening from a friend's house. Her voice was small. Mara, yeah, I don't understand all of it, but I'm sorry they did that to you. My throat tightened. Thanks, Tess. Are you okay? I'm getting closer. I drove to the cottage on a Saturday morning in late May. The dogwoods along the lake road were blooming white and pink against the dark water. I unlocked the front door with the key Grandpa had given me when I was 15. Use this if you need to get inside while we're away, he had said. Back then, I did not know he meant for good. The same scent met me inside, spruce, aging paper, and that faint sweetness I had never managed to name. Now I think it came from the boards themselves, soaked with decades of sun, rain, and firelight. I walked through every room. The kitchen table Grandpa made, still solid. Grandma's shelves, still arranged by color. the small bedroom where she had read to me when I was little, the porch where Grandpa and I had watched evening pour over the water. Inside the small desk near the window, an envelope waited. My name was written on the front in Grandpa Arthur's hand. Selene had told me it would be there. She had been saving it until the trust was secure. I opened it carefully. It was one page in blue ink. Near the end, his handwriting grew loose, the way it did when he got tired. He wrote that he knew his sons would try to sell the cottage. He did not hate them for it. Colin was still his boy, and he loved him. But Colin had never learned the difference between something that has a price and something that is precious. He wrote that he chose me not because I was perfect, but because I asked whether the roof needed work before I ever asked what the property was worth. The final line read, "Look after this place. It looked after you before you knew it." I folded the letter and stayed on the porch. Selene called the next week. "Good news, we can remove the legal notice now. There is no active threat to the title. Once it is withdrawn, the records will list only the trust with no clouds or encumbrances." And Grant, he settled with North Star. He paid the $52,000 penalty through a personal loan. The sale contract is dead. As for the notary issue, the prosecutor is reviewing it. It may be charged as a misdemeanor or a felony depending on what the investigator finds. His license remains suspended until the matter is resolved. I sat with that. I did not feel pleased. I felt exhausted in the way people feel after a long illness. No longer sick, but not restored either. "There is one more thing," Selene said. "Your grandparents included a separate education account in the trust. It was originally $62,000 for college expenses. With interest, it is now a little over $71,000. My eyes burned. $62,000, almost the same amount Dad and Grant had offered me as a buyout, as if it were generosity. My grandparents had already set aside more than that quietly without using it as leverage. "Mara, are you still there?" "Yes," my voice cracked. "I'm here. They would be proud of you." I only kept a promise. That week, I enrolled at Marlow County College in Environmental Studies with a forestry track. The campus was 25 minutes from the cottage, closer than my parents' house. On the housing forms under current address, I wrote the cottage address for the first time. It felt like coming home because it was. I asked Dad and Mom to meet me at a coffee shop on Maple Lane. Neutral ground, not the house, not the cottage, somewhere public and calm. They arrived together. Dad wore a flannel shirt I had not seen in years. It had belonged to Grandpa. Mom held her purse tight against her side, the way she gripped things when she was nervous. We ordered. I waited until the cups were on the table. "I love you," I said. "Both of you. I need to say that first because the rest may not sound like love." Mom's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "No one is selling the cottage. Not now, not later. I will not be made guilty for keeping my promise to Grandma, the one she placed in my hands because she did not believe anyone else would keep it." Dad stared into his coffee. "I am not cutting you out," I continued. "But any relationship we rebuild has to rest on respect. It cannot depend on my money, your guilt, or the belief that being my parents gives you a claim to what is mine." Mom started. "We were only trying to help this family. Then tell the truth first. You tried to sell property you did not own. You threatened to put me out. You searched my purse." She closed her mouth. Dad still had not looked up. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "I don't know how to repair this." "You don't have to repair it today." I stood and left cash for all 3 coffees. "I'll call Sunday." He nodded once. It was small, but it was real enough for that day. I walked out into the sun. For the moment, that was all I could ask for. Tessa came to the cottage on a Sunday afternoon in June. She carried a pizza box and wore the oversized hoodie she had practically lived in since middle school. "I brought lunch," she said. "I hope pepperoni still counts as food." "Always." We sat on the porch with paper plates balanced on our knees, the box between us. The lake was still. A gray heron stood near the dock, motionless, watching the water. Tessa ate slowly. She had not come because of pizza. I didn't know, she finally said. Not about the trust, not about the sale. They hid all of it. I know. Did I make it worse? I looked at her. She was 16, narrow-shouldered, still becoming the person she would be. She had not chosen any of this. She had not asked to be favored. She could not have known that what she received had left another place empty. You were a kid, Tess, so was I, she nodded and pulled a strand of cheese from her slice. It's beautiful here. Grandma said that every time she sat in that chair. Tessa glanced at the empty chair beside mine, Grandpa's chair, its armrest rubbed smooth by years of his hand. Can I come back sometimes? Anytime. She leaned her head against my shoulder for one brief second. Then she sat up and took another bite. We did not talk about mom or dad. We did not talk about lawsuits, trusts, deeds, or forged seals. We talked about her school project, the Heron, and whether the dock needed 2 new planks or 3. The cottage had guarded more than land. It had made room for something gentler to begin. In early July at 6 in the morning, I stood on the porch with a mug of coffee and watched mist lift from Willowmere. The spruce tops cut clean lines against the pale sky. Somewhere across the water, a loon called twice and went silent. I did not win against my family. Being hurt by the people meant to protect you does not create victory. No one hands you a trophy for surviving a betrayal that should never have happened. But I kept a promise. For the first time, I stood somewhere that belonged to me. I had not stolen it or played clever games for sport. 2 people had loved me enough to prepare before I even saw the storm coming. They built shelter before I understood I would need it. My grandparents could not stop my parents from becoming who they became when money entered the room. They could not make Dad less desperate or Mom less afraid. They could not keep Grant from chasing profit that was not his. But they could give me ground to stand on. Literally. I thought about the drawer letter and Grandpa's words about the difference between something with a price and something precious. This cottage has both. Only one can be measured. My family spent years staring at the wrong one. I sipped my coffee. The mist thinned and the lake turned blue. If you are listening and you feel like nobody is standing in your corner, hear this. Sometimes the people protecting you are not the ones in the room. Sometimes they made plans long before, quietly and without asking for thanks. Sometimes your part is simply to arrive at the right moment, write your name, and keep faith. Peace does not grow out of revenge. It comes from standing on solid ground and knowing you did not build your life on someone else's lie. That is my story. If it made you feel angry, relieved, hopeful, or simply less alone, it did what I hoped. Now I want to ask you something. What would you protect if you had the chance? A place, a person, a promise? Tell me below. I read everyone. If this stayed with you, pass it to someone who needs it. Subscribe to Dull Pain Stories for the next one and look in the description for more stories.